We're turning together to 2 Corinthians chapter 12. And this morning we left off in verse 10 and 11 by thinking about this wonderful expression, "For when I am weak, then am I strong." Now, as the rest of the chapter starts to unfold, Paul anticipates coming to Corinth, seeing these people that he has written such long letters to, encountering them, renewing fellowship and friendship with them, preaching and teaching the word to them. And he thinks about that, and he has a moment where he's rather fearful. And the thought is that he isn't going to find them how he wants to find them. And if he doesn't find them, mark this, if he doesn't find them how he wants to find them, then they won't find him how they want to find him. Now, that isn't a threat. It is a minister's duty to teach the truth, even if that's very inconvenient and nobody wants to hear it. And it strikes me that before we leave this chapter, in verse 19, he says, "Again, think ye that we excuse ourselves unto you. We speak before God in Christ, but we do all things, dearly beloved, for your edifying." He wants to build them up. And then verse 20, which is our text tonight, "For I fear, lest when I come I shall find you such as I would. I shall not find you such as I would, or such as I want. And that I shall be found unto you such as ye would not," or you don't want me to be. "Lest there be," and then he gives this list of 8 things: debates, envyings, wraths, strifes, backbitings, whisperings, swellings, tumults. Here we have a list. And the list amounts to this: how to be a terrible Christian. Now, I don't know if you've heard a sermon on how to be a terrible Christian, but you're going to hear one tonight. Now, I will try and make it as positive as we can, and I want to assure you that I am pointing no fingers. Not at all. But here we have a list, and I find it interesting, and so I feel that it would be profitable for us to look at this list and think about our own participation as Christians in the Church of Jesus Christ, our own part and place, and we all have a part and a place in the church, and think through this list. Number 1, if you want to be a terrible Christian, cultivate, propagate, instigate debates. If you want to be a terrible Christian, instigate debates within the context of the church. This is the first thing that he thinks to himself, I'm going to come to Corinth and there's going to be all these debates. And I think, why have I come here? Have I come to argue with people and quarrel with people and sort out all your petty squabbles about who's right, and you all come to me with your different opinions about this, that, and the other thing, and some obscure verse in the middle of the book of Daniel or the middle of the book of Ezekiel or the meaning of the badger skins in the temple, and you come to me with all your different theories and you say, now, Paul, come down on one side or the other because one of us is right and one of us is wrong, and you need to settle this, and you need to... I have not come among you to enter into debates. I've not come among you to be quarrelsome. Now, in chapter 1 of 1 Corinthians and chapter 3 that we read, he's already rebuked them for this kind of spirit. There was a whole lot of quarreling and contentions going on within the church. And it seemed like people were taking great pleasure in dividing the church into people along differing lines of opinion and dividing brethren so that you can't be in both camps. You sit on the fence, you'll get splinters. So you make up your mind and you decide. There's a division here. And a young Christian comes along and says, well, I just love Jesus. Isn't that enough? I just want to learn about God. I don't know. And there are those sorts of people that will insist that you come down on one side or the other, that you make a decision. They're quarrelsome. They're disruptive to the spirit of unity and peace, and actually what unites us. And what unites us is not the idea that you all have to be the same and think exactly the same and believe identically. That's not what unites us. We're one through Jesus Christ, and we might have all sorts of differences, all sorts of diversities among us. But unity doesn't come from us all fitting in a certain box and ticking certain things. But then we have a little unity. You want to be a terrible Christian? Be a debater. Be quarrelsome. Be contentious. Just keep pressing on those minutiae of your own particular thoughts and opinion, and don't see the bigger picture of the grace of God towards us in Christ Jesus. Let me give you a second way that you can be a terrible Christian. Number 2, envying. So we have debates. Number 2 is envyings. Jealousy is an ugly thing. It's a very unhealthy infatuation with the promotion of yourself and your own interests at the expense of other people. And when you see them with something, you think, I want that. I want that. And I want that. And you become jealous. And envying goes a little bit deeper and further and a little bit more dark than just jealousy. It's, well, they can have that, but I want one too. That's jealousy. Envying is, I don't want them to have that. They don't deserve that. I do. I want to take away what they have. I want what they have. That's envy. And you get those people. And they look around them in the church, and they look at other people's lives and circumstances and the clothes they wear and the house they live in and the car they drive and whatever else about them. Or perhaps it might be some other thing, not material. It might be the position that they hold or the gifts that they possess. And they can be stirred up with envy and think to themselves and get obsessed over this. Why wasn't I given what they were given? And they can almost get a chip on their shoulder and be angry with God and angry with everyone else, and they can be envious people. Such people are the worst of Christians. Why? How can I say that? Well, I say that for 2 reasons. First of all the Pharisees, scribes, Pharisees, and hypocrites were envious. And it was one of their great pride and envy were their 2 great sins. But I say it for this chief reason. An envious person completely lacks empathy and love. You see something that someone else is blessed with, that they have, some good thing. And instead of being pleased for them, glad for them, sincerely happy for them, because it's a good thing that God has blessed them with, all you can think about is yourself. And love doesn't think about yourself. 1 Corinthians chapter 13, you have to forget about yourself. That's what love is. It's emptying yourself of yourself and letting your heart go for another. And instead of selfishness, love is pleased and delighted and rejoicing with those who are rejoicing and are blessed, and is glad for them and thrilled for them and happy for them, whatever that blessed form that blessing might take, and doesn't grow jealous and doesn't grow envious. Apart from anything else, you don't know what struggles, what pains, what difficulties, what trials someone else has to put up with. You don't know. You might look at your circumstance and say, well, why has the Lord given them this, but he didn't give it to me? He hasn't given me this. You might be tempted to think that. And I suppose it wouldn't be a bad prayer to go to the Lord and ask for whatever it is that you desire. But ask with this caveat, Lord, your will be done. Because God, when he gives good gifts, but he also gives perfect gifts that are just right and fitting for the individual. And something that God's given someone else may not be appropriate for you. And your pride might say, well, I could handle it. But you see, God knows. And so it is a failure to love your fellow man, and it is a failure to submit to the sovereign will of God. You want to be a terrible Christian? Be envious. Come in the church, look around you, see what everyone else has, and be jealous of it. The third in our list is wraths. Now, we don't tend to use that phrase. Let me use a more modern phrase for that. Angry outbursts. That's wraths. Outbursts of great emotional ferocity. A person who is prone to a fit of pique, some kind of scary individual who you never know when and how they're going to erupt. They're like a volcano. And they have no control over their emotions and themselves, and something irritates them or angers them or frustrates them. And they just can't help themselves, but they lose control. They're not in control. They lose control, and they just lash out. You want to be a terrible Christian? Just whenever something irritates you, you just lash out. You just let rip. You just go for it, full throttle, as intensely as you possibly can. You just lay into people. You just rip shreds off them. You want to be a terrible Christian? Well, I don't know if you've ever met such people, encountered such people. Such people do not work the righteousness of God. As James says, the wrath of man worketh not the righteousness of God. You don't do the right thing when you're angry. Now, God himself is slow to anger. In fact, we have those wonderful words. He doesn't stir up all his anger. He holds back. He restrains out of compassion, out of mercy. Are you a compassionate and merciful person? Someone's irritated you. Someone's frustrated you. Do you ever think to yourself, well, maybe I've irritated and frustrated someone else at some point, and I would want them to be a bit patient with me. So I'm going to extend a little bit of grace here, a little bit of patience, a little bit of love and kindness, a little bit of mercy. I'm not going to stir myself up in my passions. I'm not going to allow my tongue to be uncontrollably unleashed like a lion or like a fire that just burns everything in its path. I'm not going to allow that to happen. I'm going to possess my vessel in honor. I'm going to control myself. You ever think that? You want to be a terrible Christian? Be given to outbursts, angry outbursts. Stir yourself up in your passions and allow those frustrations and irritations, which, by the way, will come. I'm not saying they won't. Allow them to control you and dispossess you of your grace and your peace and your patience. The fourth thing in our list this evening is strifes. Strifes, slightly different to debates or quarrelings. The original word means fractious or factious, dividing into factions. We could translate it rivalries. This word strife. It denotes ambition and self-seeking. Some translate it self-interest or self-seeking in some way, because at its heart it is self-interested. But in the general use of it in the New Testament, it has to do with those who divide, cut themselves off into groups within the church. And you all are going to find, and this is an important point, when it comes to maintaining that unity of the Spirit and the bonds of peace that we're all exhorted to do within the confines of our relationships in the church, and to try and work at the peace and the unity, you're all going to find that there are some people, and you'll get along with them, and you'll find that you've got things in common with them, and you'll have common interests, and you'll find it easier to chat to them than perhaps some other people. And that's going to be the case. And God puts us in society with others. And perhaps that individual that you hold in some suspicion and struggle to approach and speak to, perhaps they hold you in the same suspicion and struggle to approach you and speak to you, perhaps. I don't know. It's up to us, I suppose, to demonstrate a friendliness and an openness to people and a generosity of spirit, a warmth with people. It's up to us to do that as best we can. But it's okay to have some people that you're closer to than others, because we see Jesus and he's closer to Peter, James and John than he is to the other disciples, isn't he? And so that's okay. But not to the extent that this is our clique, this is our group, and you're not welcome. Not to the extent that it is some exclusivity that we are seeking to cut you off, to not allow you in, to not show you the same love and friendship and welcome and kindness and respect. And you get that within churches, cliques and groups, and the bigger the church, the more difficult that becomes to try and avoid. And the Corinthian church was a pretty large church, and they found that there were fractious people who came along, and they were quite interested in raising up their own party, their own little group, their own enclave within the church of their in crowd. And they would invite one another to their homes and show kindness and hospitality, but not them. And that moment that you start despising other people, you can become fractious. Strifes are... We've all experienced strife with people. To strive with someone, it first happened with Cain and Abel, who strove together, and Cain killed Abel. And the thing about strifes is someone's always going to get hurt when there's strife. How to be a terrible Christian? Be someone who is fractious, self-interested, have self-seeking motives and self-promoting motives, divides among people. The fifth one on our list is should speak for itself, because it is one of those words that was invented to describe something quite literally, but yet metaphorically. Backbitings. When Paul thinks of the church in Corinth and thinks, I'm going to come along, and there's going to be all these backbitings. I'm going to be minding my own business, witnessing to someone, trying to encourage someone, build them up in their faith, and someone's going to come along and chew my ear off, criticizing someone else. It's just going to happen, because that's what you're like, and that's why he called them carnal people. And everyone is biting at the back, behind the back, we might say. In other words, with someone's not present. They don't go to someone's face. Usually such people are far too cowardly. But anyway, they will criticize and condemn and hate on or run down other people behind their back. And if you encounter such people, and that is a kind of habit with them, and they're always running down, criticizing and condemning other people, then you know that's who they are, and they've revealed to you their personality. They've revealed to you a sinful trait that they haven't managed to overcome. They're backbiters. And you know full well, you don't like to think it, but you know full well, if they're talking to you about everyone else, they're talking to everyone else about you. You know that. You want to be a terrible Christian? Be a backbiter. Just have that in crowd and then go around talking to them in critical ways, running everyone down within the church. Listen, as we learned this morning, we're all weak, and you get to know someone close enough and intimately enough, you'll find a fault. You just will, if you're looking for it. My question is, should you be looking for it at all? Isn't there enough in your own heart? Remember when Peter is being restored by the Lord Jesus, and he's kind of getting fed up with Jesus asking him the same question over and over. Do you love me, Peter? Do you love me? And Peter's saying, well, you know that I like you. And he's getting fed up with it. And he says, well, what about him? And Jesus says, well, what's that got to do with you? If I want him to live until my second coming, what's that got to do with you? And then a saying went about that John, who was the disciple who Jesus loved, who was being talked about, John the disciple, was going to live until Jesus returned, which wasn't what Jesus said. It's like, if I'm dealing with him, what's that got to do with you? Haven't you got enough of your own faults to find, to content yourself with? And so he says, you're carnal, you're not spiritual. You want to be a bad Christian? Be a backbiter. Here's one that goes hand in hand with it, a gossiper. Because instead of going round sharing criticisms and condemnations of the people, finding faults and criticizing them behind their backs, you go around with all their news and information, as much as you can discover it. Whisperings, it's translated here, but it means gossip. The people who delight in nothing more than sharing everyone else's business. And such people very rarely talk about their own business, and they don't want anyone to know, because as far as they're concerned, everyone's a gossiper, so I don't want to tell anyone anything about me. But let me tell you about them. Have you heard? And I've heard this. I've heard some Christians come up to me now. I don't want to be a gossip, but. And what they mean is, I'm about to be a gossip. And here's the gossip. But I don't want to be a gossip. And what they should say is, I don't want you to label me as a gossip, even though I am one. Very occasionally, I called someone out. It wasn't so long ago where someone came up to me and they said, I don't want to be a gossip, but. So I said, so you're about to be a gossip? Yes, what is it? And they shut up completely. They never said a word. Because that's what people are like. They just delight to be the first to know the information, and they have this insatiable appetite for knowing everyone else's business, and they're nosy people, and you think to themselves, if they've not got enough of their own business to content themselves with without sticking their nose in mine. That's what you feel about such people. You want to be a terrible Christian, stick your nose in everyone else's business and go around gossiping about it and tell everyone else's personal information. Terrible Christians. We're nearly finished. Swellings. Now, we might translate that arrogance, pride, conceit, swelling mean puffed up. There's people with their own sense of entitlement and importance. That's what it's talking about. You'll come across those people and they just think they're important. And they have some area in life in which they've contented themselves that they are a little bit in advance of everyone else. And so therefore, that gives them the self-confidence and self-worth to look down on other people. Listen, there are going to be some areas in life in which you know a little bit more or have a bit more experience than some others. And you know a bit more about the job that you do, or the degree that you took, or qualifications that you passed. You know a bit more about that than the next person sitting next to you, but I can guarantee they know something that you don't. And that doesn't give you the right to exalt yourself over them and feel superior to them. Or you might say, yeah, but you don't know how well I did. Or you don't know how hard it was. And well, everyone in the world looks up to me. Yeah, well, that may well be the case, but in the Church of Jesus Christ, we don't look down on anyone except ourselves. We don't look down on anyone because we're looking up. And that's our calling, to look up, to keep looking up and keep our eyes on Jesus. You start looking to yourself or other people, you won't find a lot to impress yourself. Don't look down on others. Don't be guilty of swellings. The last one in our list is tumults. It means disorder, chaos, where every man is a law unto themselves. Every person is doing their own thing. Now, this happened in Corinth. Everyone's working to their own agenda, doing their own thing. And it happened in Corinth. We perhaps can't imagine this, but it happened in Corinth to the extent that it crept into the Sunday worship services. So they're gathering on a Sunday. And one of the elders or the pastor, one of the ministers is trying to lead the service, and someone stands up and says, "No, we're not singing a hymn now. I want to sing. I want to have a time of prayer." And someone else says, "No, it's time for a Bible reading." And it's just chaos. And everyone's a law to themselves. Nobody's got the grace and humility to allow other people to have their preference or their say or their will or their wish carried out. And everyone wants what they want and they're obsessed with it. Now, all of this amounts to the absence of the character and beauty and loveliness of Jesus. That's what it is. That's what's missing in all of this list. And that's what a Christian is. Someone who is trying their best, failing of course, but trying their best to be like Jesus. Don't be a terrible Christian. May God bless you all.